everyone's favorite Guero, El Guero Sancho. El Guero Sancho. Sit down, buckle up, and come along for the ride. It's about to get spicy.
Welcome to another episode of the Hey Guero podcast. Got a real treat for you today. A pretty interesting fella. He is the founder of the Southeast Texas Flag Football League and co-host of probably one of the most successful amateur podcasts you've never heard of, the Amateur Hour Podcast. He is also an up-and-coming YouTube sensation on the ukulele with hit songs like Nelly Smells and Silent Bite. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a lieutenant in the police department, Mr. Cody Courts.
Hello, and most of your introduction was lies, but that's fine.
Oh, come on. That's a great resume, man.
Oh, yeah. You played around a lot with the up-and-coming, and see, Amateur Hour is so we're successful at no one knowing that it exists, which is how I prefer it.
Well, I would say it's probably one of the most successful podcasts in Southeast Texas.
Okay, we can go with that.
Well, I mean, think about it. How many podcasts are there in Southeast Texas?
It's definitely on the top 100.
Definitely on the top 100 charts in Southeast Texas. I mean, it's been going for like 4 or 5 years, and you guys are closing in on 100 episodes. That's
right. We're limping along to get to 100. We're gonna retire after 100. We'll start something else.
Well, is Troy still mad as he always is?
Troy is as mad as a hatter.
Oh, well, you actually are pretty much living out every little boy's childhood fantasy, I would say. You know, every little kid. I went to Mauriceville Elementary School to have a talk, and all the kids wanted to be police officers. So they brought me in there to say, hey, you can do something other than being a police officer. So you've actually, you're living the dream, Cody.
Oh yeah, I didn't. I had no idea. It was never my dream to be a policeman, but I'm glad I am. It's a really fun job.
So did you go straight out of high school into police, or did you have another job before you went into the academy?
No, I went to college and got a degree in psychology, and then I graduated, and I was extremely shocked that my door wasn't getting beat down to workplaces. So I went to Texas Workforce Commission, and I almost took a job at Aaron's Rentals, but luckily CPS, Child Protective Services, called and offered me a job. So I was like, cool, I'll go investigate child abuse. And I made $28,000 a year, which to me was incredible. And then while I was working there, I went on a call. We had to remove a child from this house. And there was a kicking, screaming 2-year-old. The mom didn't want to let the baby go. We went out to the yard with this little kid. And the mom followed us. So the Port Arthur policeman who was there basically kept her away from us while we put the child in a car seat. And he pointed his taser at her, and she was flopping around the yard and doing all kind of stuff. And was like, look, if you come near these people, I'm going to taser you. And she didn't. And we got the kid, and we spent the next several hours with this child trying to place it. I think it was a boy, trying to place him. And the Port Arthur police officer, I don't know what he did. So later on, I got curious, and I looked up how much they made a year. And it was double what I made. I was like, oh man.
Oh wow. Yeah. Let's go with that.
So I called my friend who worked at Port Arthur PD, and I asked her, I said, well, what did that police officer do after he left? Did he do paperwork? She said, well, for that, no, he probably went and ate food or went to another call or something. I was like, really? I was like, okay, where do I sign up? So I ended up getting hired at the agency I'm with, which this is a good time to say nothing I say in this interview represents my police department, and nothing in this needs to be construed at all as any sort of legal advice. So just to get that out there.
So my
Go ahead.
So my reputation precedes me, right?
Yeah. So look, these are just the thoughts of me as a person, and they don't represent anything other than whatever's floating around through my mind. What are we on Tuesday?
Yeah.
At around 5:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, this is a stupid little podcast. Nobody needs to take legal advice from this, for sure.
No, and if you take life advice and it works out for you, then yeah, you can give me credit. But if it doesn't work out, I don't know you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I don't think people are listening to this podcast to better their life. I think it's more of an escape from reality.
Oh, okay. Well, just to finish my cop journey story, I got hired, and my goal was like, I'm just going to make my money. I'm going to sit around and I'll read a book or something, and then go to the calls that I'm assigned, and that's it. And then one day, I stopped a guy and found some crack. I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. That's so fun. And then I ended up getting in a foot chase, and I caught the fella, and that was just the most exciting thing ever. So I was like, yeah, I want drugs and foot chases. And then, I go on through my career. I ended up being a narc for a while, and
I bet that was
swore
fun.
up and down. It was. I swore up and down at the beginning of that. It's like, I'm not going to buy drugs. I'm just going to use informants to do that. And my friend and I got bored one day at the office. We're like, we're going to go try to buy crack ourselves. So we went and bought it, and it was just the most fun thing ever. So that's sort of the trajectory of my career, and now I'm a supervisor.
Well, see, so you got one on me, because I've never in my life bought crack.
Well, had it not been for the undercover part of that, I would have never done that either. I had never seen drugs before I became a policeman.
Well, that's a good thing, Cody. That's a good thing.
I was a good boy.
Me too. I've never seen any kind of hard drug in my life. So, and I don't think I would do well as an undercover narcotics agent. I just don't have the look.
Well, everybody says that, but I mean, all you have to have is like $20 and just ask around. Those guys want money.
Man, it's amazing what a couple of sleepless nights will do for your looks too. Maybe.
Oh yeah, and I have a bunch of those. So.
Oh yeah.
You don't go through as many divorces as I was sleeping all night.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you congratulations. Recently married.
Yes, I'm married to the smartest person I've ever met.
I was gonna say probably top 3, top 5 most intelligent people I've ever met in my life is Tatiana. And I like saying Tatiana.
Oh, well, I refer to her as Ms. Selesniak.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I bet you don't win any arguments at home with her being a lawyer.
Well, the score is kept in my mind, so I win all of them.
Oh, that's good.
Now, to the outside observer, I'm like 0-100, or probably 0 several thousand, but that's okay. I'm playing by my rules.
Well, you know what they say, Cody. Third time's a charm.
Well, yeah. I think this will work out nicely. Well, and if not, man, it was a fun ride.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've never met Colin's mom, which is your first wife. I did briefly know your second wife. I'm a big fan of Tatiana. I like Tatiana. So when you get home, you tell her Walter said he's a big fan.
Okay, I will. Maybe she'll even listen to this.
Who knows? She probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to your cop stuff, man. Me and you, we've been friends for several years now, and I've heard some very interesting stories from you. And Karen's a big true crime buff, and she likes to watch all those stories. And but the funniest thing I've ever heard of in my life is you're the only person that I know where a city has paid you to wear Daisy Dukes.
Well, do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, so I guess technically the city didn't pay me to wear Daisy Dukes.
Oh,
but
yes, they did. In my mind, they paid you to wear Daisy Dukes.
If I'm gonna do a job, I'm gonna do it right. So when I was undercover for a while, one of the things we did was that there's this problem with men. It's not usually women. I don't think I know of a circumstance where it was women going into public restrooms at different places and having relations. So, you don't want to be at the park and your kid go walk in a bathroom and 2 dudes are going at it.
Yeah, that's
not something I think most people want to worry about.
I don't want to walk into a bathroom in that.
Yeah. To solve that problem a little bit, or at least I don't know that any of that ever actually helped to solve it all that much. But in an attempt to solve it, we would go undercover in those places, and the charge that we would seek was indecent exposure, because it's against the law in Texas to expose your genitals to somebody else for sexual gratification in a public area.
Even in a bathroom?
That is like in a public park bathroom. Yeah, that's considered a public area. And I'm not sure, it's a Class B misdemeanor, so it's not like you're looking at any sort of time or anything. It's more of a deterrent than anything else.
Right. It's like a scared straight program.
I mean, yeah, it's like, if your city has a huge problem with people being hit by cars, you start enforcing the don't walk on the wrong side of the road law, writing tickets or doing whatever. So, but yeah, that would be considered a public area, especially if you're not in a stall, if you're like in the foyer of the bathroom, like that's accessible to the public. It's not like your house, or it's not like, it's not like you're trying to really hide all that much other than going in this little structure.
So the question I have, what was your go-to pickup line?
Oh, well, the go-to pickup line was, what are you working with?
Oh,
obviously.
Oh,
and it helped if you bit your bottom lip and stuff like that. But
I'm getting a great visual right now. Great visual.
Well, the best one of those was the day I wore the Daisy Dukes. Apparently, when I was young, Daisy in this time period, man, I must have been real good looking to these people, because they would flock in the bathroom.
Oh,
but the one guy went in. They always kind of like make small talk with you, which is super weird. And I asked him what he was working with, and he showed me. And I was like, "Hey, police, you're under arrest." It's amazing how fast somebody can zip their pants when they see a badge. And I put him in handcuffs, and he said, "I'm a 77-year-old Apache Indian."
Oh,
It's like, okay, well, sure. But that to me was the funniest one. But that was the most difficult undercover thing I ever did. I mean, I bought drugs and I did other stuff, but that was by far the most difficult thing, because it was so awkward and it was so outside of anything I would do in normal life.
I would say that you being like, just the stories I've heard you tell over the years, that being a police officer has really led you to have an interesting life. I mean, you grew up as just this average white kid in Vidor, Texas, and now you've gone to wearing Daisy Dukes in a public restroom and buying crack cocaine and doing all kinds of stuff.
No, it's been just the coolest career ever. My kids sometimes will talk to me about police stuff, and I'm like, man, you can be an accountant, you can be whatever else, but when you're 80 and you're telling stories to your grandkids, you sure do rack up some really cool ones. Even if you just sign up and you're a patrolman for your whole career, you just see some really cool stuff and very interesting stuff. You learn about people.
You'll be the coolest freaking grandpa there ever was.
If I make it. Hell, I don't know. I mean, look, he's 16. Maybe he'll be sooner than I think.
You think Colin's going to go into law enforcement?
Man, I don't know. I could see him doing that, but I don't know. He's kind of too early
to tell.
It is, and like for me, like I said, I never wanted to do that, and then once I kind of got into it, I just thought it was fascinating. My hope for him is he does something that makes him happy.
Such a good father. Such a good father.
That's right.
That's the politically correct answer right there.
But I mean, but that's from my heart, like real. Like I want him to be happy.
Of course.
If flying an airplane makes him happy, that's fine. If he's happy as a gas station attendant,
then that's fine too.
He's not addicted to anything, whatever. Just as long as he's happy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, with my daughter, I tell my daughter, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. Is at the end, I think the end game in life is to have this perfect work-life balance and to be happy. I'm pretty happy. You're a pretty happy guy. And I think if you're happy, that solves a lot of life's problems.
Sure. And also I want him to be able to take me into a decent nursing home.
Yeah, that's true.
So if he can get that done, I'd appreciate that. Now, if it's not a decent nursing home, at least find me a decent bridge to live under, and maybe like some bedding. That would also work.
Well, the reason I asked if Colin, was going to probably follow your footsteps. You've been in law enforcement long enough. You've seen the good times and the bad. You've seen when you guys were heroes to everybody, and then you've gone through the era where, public perception is not so great, and back again. So to me, there's a lot of common misconceptions about the police and police officers. I've got some family members. My cousin's a Jefferson County sheriff. He was a Gross Police Department. I got an uncle who I call him an uncle, who's basically just my dad's friend, or was my dad's friend, a constable in Port Arthur Police Department for many years. It just really surprised me. I mean, even here, I've got a guy I work with who says, them police officers, they just delete that body cam footage anytime they want to. I'm like, oh,
yeah, that's not true.
Yeah, here I'm like,
that's
here we go.
I mean, I can tell you about that's extremely impossible. But
yeah, we don't need to go into the specific. It's like the flat earther kind of. It's like those conspiracy theories.
No, I know. I'll just tell you that as far as deleting stuff like that, it's literally impossible without just a mega conspiracy involving people who have zero incentive to do that.
Right. And the checks and balances in the government and police department, I imagine, are pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, everything you do is on video, which at first, cops, the thing that cops hate more than the way things are is change. So every time we get these new pieces of technology, there's a small freak out, but then everybody ends up with, well, I'm sure glad we had that body worn camera because it showed we did everything right.
Right. And, some people are like less is more. They want less evidence in case they don't want every little second of every little thing scrutinized, but my cousin, when a major incident comes out, whether it's George Floyd or whatever, and a video comes out of a police officer doing something, and everybody's, Monday morning quarterbacking, he's like, no, I asked for his opinion because I'm just a naturally curious guy. And he's like, until I see the entire video that is not cut from start to finish, he goes, I have no opinion. Yeah.
Now on that, and that's a good way to think about it. But with George Floyd, I mean, there's to me no excuse for what happened in that case. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And crazy.
Right there. A lot of people think police officers just automatically back, police officers do no wrong, And one of the things I will say about you, Cody, is you're probably one of the most fairest guys I've ever met. Don't ask anybody in the flag football league this because, I know. We hoe everybody out there.
That's the slogan.
But yeah, you
been hoeing everybody since 2015.
Oh, that's you need a t-shirt, bub. You need a t-shirt. But yeah, man, it's just a common. It's a thing that really does drive me crazy. It's like, I've had bad experiences with police officers. The only ticket I ever got was from a state trooper. It was back when y'all. I don't want to say y'all did these stupid things because y'all don't make the laws. Y'all just enforce them. But back when the speed limit would go from 75 to 65 at dusk. Well, I was doing, 76 miles an hour at dusk in front of the prisons, and he pulls me over, asks for a license and insurance, and walks away. Nothing said. Comes back, gives me my ticket, and I said, "Can I ask what I did wrong?" And he said, and he starts screaming at me, "You don't know what you did wrong?" I said, "Whoa," and literally my ticket was for 11 miles an hour over the speed limit, which was 76 and a 65. So there are bad police officers, right? I mean, or he had a bad day. He could have came off of a really bad call. I know this because I have a lot of family members who are in, and obviously from talking to you, And then my wife the other day, she gets pulled over, gets a ticket, and she said, I wish I could leave a Google review for this guy. He's a state trooper. She's like, nicest guy I ever met. So
yeah, and the thing, like I think we were talking about misconceptions, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions about police officers is that we're all the same. I mean, policing where I work and policing in, like a small town or out in Montana somewhere or on an Indian reservation is not the same. And the police officers themselves, I mean, at my department, we have people who play heavy metal rock guitar. We have people who
play the ukulele.
Are excellent. Yeah, we got that. We have people who are like do woodwork. We have people who are of all different religions and all different ethnicities and who speak different languages. I mean, it's just a very diverse group of people, and you can't judge one person by something that happened, especially not in your town and not in your state. Like none of us that I know of are Derek Chauvin.
Right.
I mean, that's a cop somewhere that did something horrible. That's not me. I've never done anything like that.
So I got
no one that. Go ahead.
I got a question about Derek Chauvin. Okay, and this is something I think about. And if Derek Chauvin would have never signed up to be a police officer, would he? Because he was put into that situation. He did not handle the situation correctly. I think we agree on that. He didn't do the right things. That's why he's in jail. We can all agree.
Yeah.
Or at least me and you can agree. The country can't agree on anything.
Yeah, I think he needed to go to jail.
Yeah, he was called out to that situation. So therefore, if he was forced into a stressful situation. So if he would have chose a different career path, would he be in jail for something else?
He probably, and man, I don't know. I don't know the man. I don't know anything about him. But just to wildly speculate, probably not. The problem I have, though, with trying to justify anything about him or when other police officers do stuff like that is there is some accountability because we signed up to do this job knowing the risks, going through an academy where we were explicitly told this is what you're getting into, getting on the street, having your field training officer tell you this is the job and this is what you're allowed to do and this is what you're not allowed to do. And these are the people you're supposed to protect. And you're still even if somebody's a criminal, you're still supposed to protect that person when you can, and you're a public servant. You wear the white hat, and those are the responsibilities you get. To me, it's kind of like if a CEO steals $30 million, you could say, well, he was put in a spot where he had access to $30 million. If they kept him as the janitor,
Fair.
He would have never done that. I'm like, well, yeah, that's true, but once you have the powers you have in whatever role you play in life, with great, what was that Superman thing? With great power comes great responsibility, right?
Right.
So
and just like any profession, I'm sure, like in my profession, there are scumbags, right? And just like in there's good cops and there's bad cops, and it's a fact of life. That's any profession. There's good bartenders and bad bartenders, good teachers and bad teachers, right? And today I was actually talking to Erica about one of my friends. He's really I've been told he's really considering going and changing careers and going into the police academy. He's around my age, but he probably would make a good cop. I don't know, but I have another friend of mine who's always wanted to be a cop, and he would make a bad cop, and he still to this day debates about going to be a police officer. And he was in criminal justice and stuff. But the reason he wants to be a police officer is because he likes the authority. Those guys?
Yeah,
bad police officers.
Those guys exist. But the thing is, like, at my department, we do a large amount of due diligence when we hire people. Like, people think that they just get on at a police department and it's like easy. But that's not the case. At our department, you have to apply first. Mm-hmm. Do this gigantic background packet, which gets checked by police officers, like literally calling the people you listed in there. You have to have a clean criminal history, a clean credit history. And then after that, you do your physical test and your little written test. I'm kind of getting on backwards, but you do all those things. And then we submit you to a polygraph exam. and then, well, there's an interview board in there somewhere, and you take a drug test and a psychological evaluation, all that just for us to say, yeah, you can work here. And after that, there's so much training and stuff that you go through. It's just a lot, and people think that we just kind of give these guys a badge and a gun, which we don't give them a gun. They have to purchase a gun.
You got to purchase your own tool belt, huh?
Yeah. Now you get a little stipend to purchase your equipment, but you purchase it. And then, there's just a lot that goes into the making of a baby police officer.
So let me ask you this.
I don't think people know that.
Do you think, 37, 40 years old is too old to start being a police officer?
Absolutely not. No. I don't think, as long as you're physically able to do the job, which is another misconception. Like people think we fight people and chase them constantly. It's just not the case.
Yeah.
As long as you're like a moral person, you have the intellectual ability and you have the physical ability to do those things, I don't think any age is too old.
Well, what I found interesting from knowing you is if you want to advance in the line of police work, I don't know how you would say it, but if you want to go like you have gone from narcotics to sergeant to detective and lieutenant,
look, hang on now. It's detective then sergeant. Sergeant's above detective.
I get it.
Well, people, I put when I got promoted, I went back to patrol, so I put on a uniform, and people would see me and they're like, "I thought you made detective." I'm like, "No. That's not how this works."
Just because you wore a suit every day, they thought you were more important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You see the words. I know how to speak English, people. More important was on purpose.
Más importante.
Look at the Spanish coming out of this guy.
Hey, I like day 1025 of Duolingo, man.
Oh, yeah? Can Tatiana speak Spanish?
She can. She speaks it well.
What other languages does she speak? Doesn't she speak three?
She speaks dog fluently.
Oh.
She can. Well, no, she doesn't. But she attempts to speak dog. They just don't listen. Well, one kind of listens, but no, just English and Spanish and legalese. Yeah,
well, the thing that got me though, and even with Lance, because Lance recently went to be a detective, is how much you guys actually study. Like the people who do advance, like you're pretty, like I would say you're top 10, 20 most intelligent people I know. I don't know a lot of people, but you're up there. I remember you studying for your lieutenant exam, and you would spend hours alone in the concession stand reading books on Sunday when we played football.
Yep.
So, I think that's a common misconception that people think. The best police officer gets promoted, and because he caught more bad guys, and it was eye opening for me to see. I think I watched you go through your sergeant exam too, if I'm not mistaken, and just the amount of studying you did was incredible.
Because for that test there was 2,000 pages of material, and out of that there was 100 question test. So it's just a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. So, and you guys have to be kind of well versed in the laws. I mean, you're not technically lawyers, but you have to know what to charge people for. I mean, because
sure.
you know that I call you from time to time when a dumbass debate in this office breaks out over what people can and cannot do. Yeah. And when it gets really stupid, I call you. And one of the debates we had the other day, and I don't know if you know about this, but it obviously came from TikTok, because everybody gets all their information from TikTok. But it was about mutual combat in Texas. Have you ever heard of the saying mutual combat in Texas?
I don't know the saying. I mean, I know what mutual combat is.
Okay, so here's how it was argued in the office, that if I'm at a bar, I'm at Dylan's down the street, right? And I have some beef with this guy, and me and him want to go out in the parking lot, and there's always a police officer at, Madison's or Dylan's or a lot of these places. And we just look at the police officer and say mutual combat, and we can go out in the parking lot and kick each other's ass. And nobody's getting arrested afterwards.
That's not true. No.
Well, TikTok
it's not
lied to
like
my ass.
it's not like Game of Thrones. It's not like
Only the strong will survive.
Well, there's a law called disorderly conduct fighting, and yeah, that's an arrestable offense.
So you can't just say mutual combat. At no point in time can you do mutual combat and just nobody get in trouble. It's just whoever whips each other's ass and y'all go back in the bar, buy each other a beer, and be gone.
If you're in your backyard, you can.
Oh, well.
I mean, you know, if you're in a private place, sure. But if you're in the public, no.
See, I mean, this is the bad thing about TikTok. TikTok's going to get a lot of people arrested.
Man, though, I've known people for a long time, and I've been around a lot of heated flag football games. It's my experience that 99% of people who say they want to fight don't really want to fight.
Oh, 100%. We just had this conversation today. We were watching a video on the TV and there, 2 referees going at it and nobody's breaking it up. I said, do you know how easy it is to break up a fight? And they said, oh, guys in my office going, oh, nobody wants to get hit. I'm like, but that's the thing. They're not swinging. They're not throwing punches. People don't want to fight. You know how many fights I've had to break? I'm sure you know, but I've been in the middle of 20 people out at flag football. You know what?
Because nobody really wants to fight. I mean, well, not nobody. Most people don't really want to fight. I mean, they're upset. And I almost think that they are relieved whenever it's broken up.
1,000%. And my birthday's a prime example. You were at my birthday party a couple of years ago, and I think you de-escalated the situation because you were a police officer. I did not de-escalate it because I was drunk and I was throwing people out of the way. But there was plenty of opportunities to hit my drunk ass and nobody did. Nobody really wants to fight because people know in the back of their head there's consequences. People know there's consequences for fighting in a public bar.
Sure. And then, like, to me, the way I think about fighting is if somebody disrespects your wife or does whatever thing and you don't punch them, but you simmer on it, you're upset, you go back later, you're at home and you're thinking to yourself, man, I wish I would have punched that guy. Okay, that's a bad thought and you feel like you got an L. But let's say you did punch that guy in that bar. Mm-hmm. Well, then you end up getting arrested. Or he bumps his head on the table and he's got a serious injury or something like that. Then you're sitting in jail and you're thinking, wow, I really wish I wouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
Yeah. On one, you feel kind of like a wuss, but on the other one, like your life's changed.
Well, I've come to the realization, and I don't know any way other to say this, but I think about that stuff. I like to go to Dylan's every now and then or whatever, and I'm in those situations, and I will walk away from a fight because I got a lot to lose. I can get sued,
Sure.
I mean, or I like to go swim in the lake on the weekends. If I hit a guy and he falls over and hits the stairs and it kills him, my life changes over a stupid bar fight. So
or if you get hit in the face with a beer bottle.
Yeah, I got a buddy. I got a buddy.
Your eye. I mean,
I have a buddy of mine, and I'm going to get him on this podcast. He was hit over the head with a pool cue years ago, and he actually, when he came to, he hit the first person near him and knocked his eyeball out of socket. So, imagine a lot of people's, and he still has a scar to this day. So imagine a lot of people's lives changed over a stupid bar fight.
Sure. And that's another thing about mutual combat and a lot of these laws that people kind of talk about. Alcohol really changes things, because being drunk in public and violent or, a danger to yourself or others, you're just going to get arrested for it. It's easy to put somebody in jail. It's a lot harder to let it escalate and let somebody really get hurt.
Now the question,
alcohol really accelerates things.
Now here's the question I have. This is a true story. This happened to my father-in-law. It wasn't at a bar. It was at a concert. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it was at a bar. So somebody, another gentleman, grabbed his wife's ass as she walked by, which is my mother-in-law. It's kind of weird to think about it now that my 70-something-year-old mother-in-law's ass was being grabbed, but it happened. So he turned around and knocked the guy. I don't want to say knocked him out, but he punched him. In a situation like that, you're at a bar because basically, technically, let's get all nerdy. The grab on the ass is assault. Fair?
It's a Class C assault. Yes.
Yeah. So what happens there? Do y'all both go to jail? Like if you like, how would you instruct your police officer who's working Dillon's? Is it up to the bar who presses charges? Do they say, man, he had good cause to hit this guy? Or are you just supposed to run and go tell the teacher, like they teach you in high school?
In the moment, and I'm just going to tell you practically what would happen. Because what you're describing to me is a bunch of Class C things. Class C means something that goes to municipal court. It's not you're not going to prison. Mm-hmm. It's like a traffic ticket.
Gotcha.
So practically what would probably happen, since I assume everybody was drinking, is that my assumption, or there's just like the only sober bar in the world?
Listen, on this podcast, every story told starts with a drink in your hand.
Okay. So what would probably happen is they would take, most likely, if they took people to jail, they would probably just go ahead and take the guy who punched the guy to jail, and probably the guy who got punched to jail for PI, for public intoxication. If the lady in this situation wanted to press charges for Class C assault, which I think actually has a new legal term, but I can't remember what it's called. I think it's indecent assault or something like that. Mm-hmm. They would press, if she wanted to press charges, they'd probably book him in on that too, or they would at least do a report and she could pursue those charges later. And that's how that would get handled. Now, in a different way, if let's say that this lady was sober and ran down the story to the police officer, it seemed like that would happen. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I got him. He's not going to do anything else. We're literally going home. He can get in the car with me. Mm-hmm. And the other guy's not seriously injured. They might let her take him home. Mm-hmm. They're going to do a report about it. But if the guy who grabbed the woman's behind said, I want to press charges for assault, they would probably take a report for it because that does fit the statute. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anything much would happen of it, just because, let's go to the very end of the day and he's pleading not guilty and whatever. And that gets in front of a jury. No jury is going to look at that and go, yeah, like all these drunk people around and he grabbed her, then he punched him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's just not how the world works. So I think the two options are those two dudes go to jail, or a responsible party takes responsibility for them.
Well, look at us. We're out here doing the Lord's work. We're keeping people out of jail. We're really giving them real knowledge here. So don't fight in a bar. And obviously none of this is legal advice, but Cody Courts' advice at the end of the day is don't fight at a bar, walk away, be the bigger man, and everything is going to be okay.
But that's something to really think about, especially if you're a young guy. If you remember, when you do things, you take on this responsibility. If you go to a bar with your good-looking lady, other drunk people are at the bar that are going to do drunk things. And if they do some drunk thing that makes you angry, if you decide to act on that anger, you might end up in jail for that night. Yep. I'm not trying to give advice on anything, but that's just the case. Drunk places with drunk people sometimes have poor outcomes.
Yeah, there's consequences for everything, right?
Sure. I mean, and while that's not like the chivalrous, super awesome thing, if the police never do anything about those things, then you just have bar fights everywhere, and it's like the Wild West. Yeah.
Nobody liked the Wild West either. People got shot.
No. And like 95% of people that go to a bar want to go there and drink and have fun and laugh with their friends and watch live music. They don't want to go there and watch two drunk dudes fighting and all this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just, it is comical how many times we debate about the law in this office, even though we have zero law experience.
Yeah.
And when it gets too bad, I say, all right, I'm calling Cody. And Cody's going to give me the level-headed answer. And it's always like, I think I called you one time. I was like, hey, if somebody breaks into your house, can you shoot them? And you're like, well, yes and no. I'm like, oh, here we go. I said, I know what he's going to say. He's going to say yes and no. And of course, would you give
I
me?
mean,
Well, yes and no.
yeah, they kick in your door. Yeah, you can shoot them.
But your other answer was if it's your neighbor coming to borrow sugar and they just didn't knock, then no.
I would not shoot them. No, don't do that.
You will be in trouble.
And the other thing is, like, on that part of it, if let's say they do kick in your door,
mm-hmm.
and you point your gun at them, and you're like, lay on the floor. And they're like, okay, no problem. And then you tie them up and shoot them in the head. That might not be okay.
Right. So you give the very lawyer-like response to a lot of things, and I get why you do that.
But people, the thing people need to remember about this stuff is most of the law is written saying things like, in the protection of yourself from injury or another person from injury or the theft of your property or the damage of your property, you are allowed to do X.
Mm-hmm.
So the key word in that whole thing is protection. Once whatever threat is not a threat, you're not allowed to seek out like a punishment.
Correct.
Like if you and another guy are fighting in the parking lot and he says, whoa, you got the best of me, I'm done, and you continue to beat him, that becomes an assault.
Correct. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to tell you a true story. Okay. And I want to get your take on it. And I have a question about it. So, a friend of mine, she worked at, I guess we can say the name. She worked at Monroe's in Beaumont, and it got robbed. They come in and they grab a bunch of the expensive fire retardant shirts and they run. Well, at the time, my buddy was also working there, and this is several years ago. And so he chases the guy down the street and runs him down in his truck and holds him at gunpoint and puts the gun in his ass. And I'm not making this up. The guy was laying face down, and he said, "Man, stop that! You're gay." And he said, "If you move, it's gonna get bad." Anyway, the cops come. Yeah, I wouldn't move. The cops come, arrest the guy, but they took my buddy's gun. He said for like 3 to 6 months they took the gun from him.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
what do y'all do with the gun for that long? Even though it was never fired.
No, but that would be part of that case, and it's going to be evidence. So until that case is discharged, until it's over, usually you don't get your property back. That's evidence. There's some exceptions to it, but it's all kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just. I mean, like if let's say you did fire your gun, because the thing is, part of this whole report is going to be, John Smith, who was working at Monroe's, chased the theft suspect down and pointed a firearm at him to get him to comply, to get back the property or to do whatever. Mm-hmm. That firearm is part of that case. That's evidence. And I'm not saying evidence against him. It's just evidence for the case. So usually you don't get your evidence back until the case has been completely adjudicated or dismissed or done whatever it's going to do with.
See, I know these sound like off-the-wall questions, but how long have you been in law enforcement now? 15
years.
So in 15 years, you've seen some crazy shit. I mean, you've seen the every end of the spectrum. So this is like crazy stuff. Like, this is what blows my mind. Crazy stuff like this happens all the time, and even in our little town.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Oh, it does. I mean, it's not like... it's not like some extraordinary, crazy event happens every single day, but it's fairly frequent. I mean, there's always...
But over the course of the year, you have some good stories to tell.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in your career as a police officer?
I mean, there's been a lot of strange things. I'll give you one from the beginning of my career. There was a guy who was upset with his girlfriend who had a baby, and she had the baby with her. The baby was from another person, and they got into a fight. He snatched the baby out of her arms, and ran off down the block.
Mm-hmm.
She called us. We all got on the scene. We were looking for this dude and this baby for about an hour or so, and it was very, very cold. So we found the guy. Mm-hmm. Arrested him, but he would not tell us where the baby was. So we're canvassing these yards, like looking for this. I think it was like a month or two old baby, like a small baby, in the very freezing cold. And I thought at the time, I'm like, there's no way this baby's alive. Because it was just so cold and it had been a little while. Well, my training, I was in training at that point. My training officer and I went through this one yard, and these people had made like a little walkway out of those little square cinder blocks, not cinder blocks, but pavers.
Right.
And on like one of these pavers, there was this little baby. And the way I remember it, now I may not remember it perfectly, but the way I remember it was there was this little baby wearing just a diaper, laying in the middle of one of these little pavers, just kind of squirming around. And I was like, oh my goodness, that was one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life, was this little baby out in the freezing cold laying on a paver.
Wow.
So we scooped it up and the baby was okay, but it was just a very weird visual to see, but the baby was okay. So that one ended happily.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've heard some stories from you over the years, some of them probably not appropriate for,
No, can't tell all of them.
for a podcast, but man, y'all see some crazy stuff. But man, I have enjoyed having you on the podcast. You're actually the first podcast that I was Amateur Hour. You've been doing podcasts for several years. So maybe you were my inspiration, Cody. I'm trying to be like you. Oh man,
I'm so inspirational. Well, hopefully you'll shoot higher next time, but I'm flattered.
Well, and when we get the studio set up in here, we got to get down. We got to get you, Troy, and Aaron down here and shoot a live episode of Amateur Hour.
I love it. We're all about it.
1,000%. But one of the things we do here, we ask every guest when it's their first time on the show, if you're going to pick one Mexican restaurant to go eat at, let's say it's your birthday, it's a special occasion, you're going to pick a Mexican restaurant, where are you going in Southeast Texas, and what are you getting off the menu?
Now look, you have to understand that I don't really like Mexican food.
Oh, you are just off the podcast. This is called the Hey Wedo podcast.
I don't really like it.
You're going to be the most hated guest. Do not say cassoulet.
I mean, no, cassoulet. No, my favorite one is Taco Bell.
Oh, God.
And I'm going to get 2 soft tacos, just how they come, a cheesy gordita crunch, and if they still have it around, a Mexican pizza.
You did not say Taco Bell. That's
it, man. That's my Mexican restaurant.
The whitest person in America. You think Doritos is Mexican food?
No, I love like Asian food. I can tell you about that.
No. It's a Southeast Texas.
And as far as like, I guess the sit down, quote unquote, Mexican restaurants, I don't know. Lupe Tortilla has some pretty good food.
Yeah, Lupe Tortilla actually has good food, but I mean, we're in Southeast Texas. Like literally behind me is 3 Mexican restaurants I could walk to. And then
all the food's the same.
Well, no, not really.
They all taste the same to me.
Cody, you're not my friend right now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
you win some and you lose some.
Well, look, man, I've enjoyed having you on the podcast, and you have to come back, especially when we get the studio set up, and tell some more stories. Is that fair?
Yep.
All right.
Appreciate it, Walt.
I appreciate it, Cody. Thanks for calling.
All right. Have a good night. All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, if you like the podcast, make sure you like and subscribe, leave me a comment, and be sure to check out our other videos.